All right, you guys, welcome back to the garage. Today we're doing more of the same. Maybe something a tiny bit different though. So this is for those who are new to the channel or joining the program in progress. This is my 1986 Chevy C10, where really the only thing left factory or stock or whatever you want to call it on the truck is the body panels. I say that, but the front fenders are not original to the truck. They're China replicas, whatever you want to call them, not very well made. I would recommend, if you ever do wrap one of these things up like I did, restore some old sheet metal. It is heavier, but it is it fits so much nicer. But anyway, I'm getting off track. So this is my 1986 Chevy C10 that I use for autocross and drifting and road course. And the dogs won't go outside because it's a little toastier today. Maybe I need to go put their blanket in the shade. So I don't know if I've ever properly introduced these two. This is Pearl. She's a 2-year-old, 3-year-old boxer now. It's like 51 pounds. She's just a little thing, aren't you? And then this is Smalls. So it is for the Sandlot, but not because he's a dog, but because of his black eye, which was way more prominent when he was a puppy. So Smalls had a black eye in Sandlot, so we named him Smalls. He's 2. But anyway, that's Pearl and Smalls. Anyway, nearly everything has been upgraded on this. It's got a 2017 Camaro SS 1LE full rear suspension and coilovers. The front's been converted to drifting and has an LS swapped LQ4 that's been heavily, I won't say super heavily modified, but you know, it's not factory anymore. It's got a decent cam in it, headers, recently switched to the Holley fuel injection, so all of that stuff's been upgraded. But the transmission that I'm running is still out of a 1978 Corvette. Now, at the time, I chose the 78 Corvette transmission because they were the highest rated. They're like 350 foot-pounds of torque rated, so strong-ish as OEM transmissions went back in the day for manual stuff. There just isn't great options until you get up into the new stuff. So I wasn't gonna do this, but I was driving down the road the other day and there's a wicked vibration, something rattling around, I don't know, in 4th gear in this thing. When you're on the gas, you don't notice it so much, but if you're just cruising or let your foot off completely, it just rattles. Sounds like there's marbles running around in there, which isn't good. That means that potentially a bearing's gone out or there's something floating around in there, or that the driveline itself isn't centered. I did have to kind of move the rear driveline around a little bit with the U-joint and the yoke, you know, use a punch and just, you know, cram the U-joint caps together a little harder. But all that being said, that probably needs to come out. That's gonna go in another car anyway. That's another project car that I've got coming. to the channel, but that leaves this guy, which I've had for quite some time, about a year. Just never found a good reason. There was always other stuff that I was worried about installing on it, and as you can see, it's just over here buried on a cart. So it may be that now is the time to install it. So I already have, I can't even remember what brand this is. I want a Hinson Motorsports remote bleeder on it, I think. Just gonna run the factory slave for now. It worked just fine in when I had my 2017 Camaro. This is a new throwout bearing that I've got for it in case the one that's in the truck currently doesn't work. So yeah, so this is out of a wrecked Camaro, out of a 1LE again. So the cool thing about this is it does have, you can see right here, it's got the fluid pump in it so it can circulate through a cooler and stay cool. So the downside to these ones is the shifter. On the new, on the Tremix and TKOs, you know, the Magnum transmissions, there's a couple of slots through the back, through the middle, whatever, for those shifters. And this one had a remote mount kind of that sat up on the back, and then part of it bolted to the body of the car. So I either have to figure out, excuse me, I had to burp, drink a soda. Anyways, so yeah, I gotta figure out where this is gonna go in the truck. This may be in a good spot, but on my TKO, or on my Super T10 that's in the truck already, my shifter's clear at the back of the tail shaft, and that's still kind of far forward. So we'll see where we end up. Maybe I can make a normal shifter work in that spot going in this truck. So we'll have to see. That being said, got to get the old one out before this one can go in. So let's do it. All right, you guys, so this video was supposed to be a video about installing a TR6060 into my truck. So, however, what it actually is a video about diagnosing the vibration on the Super T10, because this particular TR6060 probably isn't going to work, at least not in the configuration that I have. So, on the new cars, if you look down right, let me see, I need a light. So on these particular 6th gen Camaro TR6060s, if you look right here, you'll notice that the splines do not reach the front of the shaft. So for the Camaro, they have a giant, I'm not going to haul it over here because it is giant, a giant clutch setup. So that is the clutch that comes in a 2016 plus Camaro SS 6-speed transmission. It's a beast, weighs a lot. So there's 2 clutch plates in there, and then the pressure plate on the top, and this is actually the flywheel friction surface, and you can see that moves around. So this is the top. It's got all of that distance that does nothing. So GM's like, well, I guess we don't need to put splines to the end, and they didn't. So what that does is on every other flywheel and clutch setup, and I measured this, so let's see, we're gonna do this way too. So the distance from the bell housing and input shaft, if you measure, and I did measure this, I'm not just holding this up, but that stick out is actually within a 1/16 of an inch of what the Super T10 is. So the shaft length is perfect. However, the clutch disc needs to sit right on the end of that. And that's the way it is on the Super T10. That's the way it is on nearly every other GM transmission that there is, with the exception, I think, of the CTSV with the LSA in it. So that's a long explanation to say this transmission in this current configuration will not work. So you either need a custom flywheel, or I did try to buy a T56 Magnum input shaft, but apparently they're a 1/2 inch shorter than the shaft that's in that one. So I don't know if I can get one from like a 2015 that's for an LS3 instead of an LT1. I don't know. And shops aren't super interested in helping. They want to rebuild your stuff. They don't want to help you get the right parts. And even if they could get the parts, apparently they're not available. So super fun parts, you know, supply chain issues there as well. So I don't know where I'm at. It's probably going to have to get a custom flywheel made, because I don't know if I can. I mean, I might be able to sell this, but yeah, just parts. Ultimately, with the custom flywheel setup, it probably would have been, and clutch that it would take, so the flywheel and clutch that it would take, this would have been better just to buy a T56 Magnum, or to try and find the transmission out of a 2014 or a 15. So an LS3 1LE Camaro is what it would have been better, because those had the better gearing in it. Didn't have the super deep first one. They were called the MM6 designation in the Camaros. The other ones were like the M10, I think, that had a super steep first gear to go with the 345 rear differential in the one, or in the regular Camaro SS. The 1LEs had a 391. Anyways, it's a lot of information saying that this transmission isn't going to work without some kind of modification. So this episode is actually going to be diagnosing the Super T10 that's in here and figuring out what I've got to do to get that to work so that I don't have wonky vibration and can actually go drive this thing. Anyways, onward to show. All right, so we're down under the truck, and I'm hoping that you can't hear that dog that's been barking all afternoon. Let's see, is that in focus? So I'm down under my truck, and there's a lot of movement right there. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's really not out any farther than it used to be. You know, that's about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. Really, the vibration wasn't a problem until I got this. So I don't know if this driveline, out of phase, or so that could be part of the issue. This was never a problem until this drive shaft, and that's almost exactly where it was when I had my Ford 9-inch in here. So I don't know, I'm gonna smack these U-joints a little bit and see if I can center them a little better. I don't know. Hopefully you understood that explanation. Let's see what happens. So we're up on jack stands. We're just in the garage. I'm gonna just run it through the gears in here and see if I feel anything. Sport the rear just a little bit more. It's shaking a lot. So All right, let's try this again. So I guess that's a good thing about a camera. So I can set it underneath here and aim it right where I need it to be aimed and not see anything. Let's see, we're gonna have to go from the front. Probably, to be honest, I'm not gonna see anything out of the ordinary, but maybe. We definitely need some more light. All right, a little bit better angle right there. Let's see what happens. Helps if you push the record button. So I looked at the phasing. That is okay. I was thinking for some reason they needed to be perpendicular instead of parallel, and that's the yokes on the drive shaft, by the way. If you're not sure what phasing excuse me, if you're not sure what phasing is, look it up. It's kind of interesting, but it does have to do with vibration in a driveline. Usually it's to do with four-wheel drive rigs or something that's got a slip yoke or a slip spline shaft on the drive shaft, because it sometimes when you take those apart they'll clock a little bit, but anyway, so I think it might have to do with actually I'm getting ahead of myself. So I double checked the driveline angles. I'm within a degree, so and that's so the angle of the yoke of the drive shaft and the angle of the yoke on the rear differential need to be within 1 degree of each other, or exactly, but 1 degree is allowed, and that's just fine. So when I'm shaking that stuff around in there, there is a lot of play. It's really loose. Could be that the yoke is just junk. That's a possibility. It's an old yoke that I got for a Turbo 400, and they happen to be the same, just a factory yoke, and they're the same 32 spline output shaft on the T10 as the Turbo 400. So I'm gonna pull the drive shaft off and shove it all the way into the housing just to see how loose or not loose it is. But when I'm wiggling that thing around, like, there's enough that you can see, not daylight, but you can see space in between the seal. So that's a lot. Anyway, I'm gonna pull this off and then we'll see what we get. All right, so I think, you know, somebody can admit when they're wrong. I guess I'll be one of those persons right now. So that's where the driveline is. That's where it needs to be. And somehow I measured that far wrong. I've admitted on this channel before that my measuring sucks. I think it's 3/4 of an inch or an inch too short. Hey, situation update. Situation number 1 is my creeper sucks at rolling. So these wheels are all but worn out. on my hobo freight. Anyway, so what we're doing now, it's hard to see, and I can't tell because if you're in focus, because it's not in focus for me. But we're getting the shifter out. So this is a linkage. It's a rod linkage type setup on these guys. Also, it's kind of funny. Remember when I was like, oh, I brought all those rocks back from Vegas. I brought the party with me. That was bullshit. It was crap is what it was. Because now all the rocks are under here and I didn't sweep first. And those are why my creeper's not rolling. P.S. Oh my gosh, ain't that always the way? New battery. There we go. Let's try this again. You thought that I designed it that way, didn't you? So you gotta tighten it from both sides. And less scratches than, and now you're sideways, so less scratches than there would have been had I pulled it through the other end. And back under the truck. If anybody wants to sponsor me a lift, that would be great. Don't even know if you can see that. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Okay, undo the one bolt that's left. The other bolt's actually trapped up in there, so that's why it's still there. Oh, damn it. Come on, come on. Frustration mounting, getting bigger. Frustration escalating. There we go. Okay, and I didn't scratch the aluminum that badly. So do you guys ever ask yourself why you do it the hard way? Like, why don't I get my stuff out to do this easy in the first place instead of struggling with the tool that you got out to do a different job? Just me? All right, I thought so. Torque these things on here. Oh, it was me. And why do we do these things to ourselves? I don't know. So, situation update. Bell housing bolts, all but one are done. I just got to remove these transmission bolts. And then there's 2 bolts on each side on the cross member. Those will be pretty quick. And then we're out. So this has been like a 30-minute job. Could be faster if I had a lift. All right, pulling the drive shaft out, and I had a little bit drip, so I got a pan, and I'll be the first to say it doesn't look good. Well, she's ready to drop, so I'm gonna move my camera so it doesn't get crushed, and then, you know, Tony Angelo, eat your heart out, because I don't see a transmission jack around here either. Get this out of here. Okay, bolts out. I mean, I act like it's a big deal. This transmission, one of the problems with going to the new one is this transmission weighs 80 pounds. They are not heavy. I mean, they're heavy if the engine's kind of being supported on it. So, oh, let's pull the bolts out of the cross member there. That makes sense. There we go. Okay, she's loose. I love leaky fluid too. It's my favorite. Okay, here we go. Oh, that's not in a good place. Ah, oh, headers and exhaust. Those weren't in the way before. Okay, there we go. There. Woo! That was close. You almost got hit. But she's out. so it's another day here in the garage, and I've made some progress, not tons of progress. So the goal for today is to get the original transmission, the Super T10, fixed up and put back in, and I'll show you why this is apart. When we left off last, I was talking about how the drive line was either too short or out of balance or out of phase or this, that, and the other. And I'll kind of go over what it is that I found, but I'm also in a little bit of a time crunch because there's an event tomorrow. This has to go back together, get back in the truck. It's not too big a deal, but it still has to be done. So let's take a look at what we've got. So this is the tail housing for that transmission, the Super T10. So I have gone through hell and high water trying to find a bushing for this, thinking that, well, I'm pretty sure this got damaged or wallowed out or whatever. So this is supposed to have kind of a, they call it Babbitt, same kind of stuff that you would almost have on your main bearings and cam bearings inside your motor, your connecting rod bearings. So very similar material, but I hadn't been able to find one that fit. So looking at Chevy stuff, this is supposed to be Chevy. So this bushing here is actually a custom made bushing for a Ford transfer case, and it fits in here the way that it's supposed to. All the rest of the Chevy stuff does not fit. And then this is the slip yoke off of the drive shaft that I had, and it was wobbling around in there like crazy. But if you look in there in the ends, I don't know, it's kind of, let me flip my line on. Boop. So you can see that the thread or the splines in there don't start until like 1.5 inches down. So if you're not fully bottomed out when you go to try and run this, you're not going to hardly be on any splines, and there's not a lot of spline length actually on here. So I might have only been on the splines, you know, even when the transmission was where it was supposed to be. So that may not what I'm saying is that may not have been the right tail shaft, even though it fit. So 32 spline, because that is for Chevy, and if this is Ford sized. Anyway, so this bearing fits, and now this is actually a 4-wheel drive slip yoke, which fits nice and snug in there. Has threads all the way down, and so it should, when I put everything back together, it should be nice and tight. And that should keyword should get rid of the wobble in the drive shaft. Crossing my fingers, it's the only option I have. I had talked about putting this guy right here in and trying to get this done, but that turned out, that is a debacle that I will have to go into at another time, because there's a lot of splaining to do. Issues that you wouldn't think of until you get it home and realize, well, son of, you know, pick your expletive, that's not gonna work. So anyway, more to come on that. Let's get this pressed into the housing and get this back on the transmission. All right guys, so I've got this set up in the press. I've got some transmission assembly kind of grease lubey stuff slathered on that bearing just to help it slide in real good. Now make sure that's good. We're just gonna slide her home, and this actually doesn't take much to press this in here. So, and then you just press it in till those washers are flat, and that's all. That's it. Slicker and snot. Okay, so you just saw me press that in, and it actually pressed in too far, and I'm sure you're not going to be able to see it, but where this hole is, this trough ends right back where my finger is, and because this is a custom piece, it actually went over and covered the whole dang thing, so it wouldn't have got fluid through that. So what I had to do was make me a custom bushing presser dealie and shove that back out right about there. And that is no big deal because this seal fits on this upper ring right there and will fit just fine over the top of it. No harm, no foul. Everything works the way that it's supposed to. This just happens to stick out ever so slightly, which doesn't matter because there's also a bunch of meat back in there. So should be good. I guess I'll find out firsthand. If it does not, it'll work or it won't. Okay, so I got the tail shaft. Everything's all cleaned up. The mating surfaces are cleaned up. I've got the reverse idler put back in there. Everything's ready to go back together. I've got some silicone smeared across here for a little gasket. Now this is a challenge because in here, this is the reverse shift fork. So you've got to make sure that everything is perfectly lined up. And actually I ought to put some looby dooby on that real quick so that it doesn't tear the O-ring when I put it back together. But if you've never put one of these together, there's a lot of stuff to line up on this reverse shaft. So look that up if you're interested, but I'm gonna hurry and lube that up and then we'll set it in. All right, enough yakking is what I mean. Let's set this thing in here. All right, you guys, it's only been like a few seconds for you, but for me, it's been a while. So the ball popped out of the little detent down in here, and that's not fun. So it took me a minute to figure out how to put it back in. You'll notice my little pry bar there. So that's gonna hold that up, allow me to set this thing down where I need it, rotate it ever so slightly, and then click it into place. So take two, let's try this again. I will say, like, if you want to be ultimately frustrated, this is one way to do that. But oh yes, hallelujah. So that was it. It is funny how you can tell how frustrated someone videoing is or not by how much they show and how much they skip. I only skipped a little bit right there though, you know. So could have been worse, could have been better, could have been more smooth. This has taken entirely too long. So I've been messing around with this thing now long enough that I could have actually installed the thing and gone for a test drive. And I can't find where my normal 3/4 thin wall is, which is super good. Sitting around here on under this mess somewhere probably. I gotta laugh because I stood up and that socket I was looking for, right there. Anyway, back together, everything's on, everything's in. I can't clean it up. The funny thing, or I'm not gonna clean it up. Funny thing is I was convinced that this was the last time that thing would be coming out of the truck, but it is not. I was just about ready to put the transmission back in the truck. Well, I went ahead and did it. So it's back in the truck. Everything's already hooked up. And you'll notice that it's actually got different wheels on it. So in the last little clip you saw, it was the day before a drift event, which was the last video. And so I threw it back together. It was late when I did it, so I had to get it back together. I didn't end up filming it. You saw me get it out. Is it really that much more interesting putting it back in? I don't know. That being said, I went to the drift event and still only got it into second gear, which I never really felt the vibration in second gear anyway, although the truck was notably more smooth. So I actually have it set up here so we can kind of do the send off for this video, find out if it actually helped the vibration or not, you know, see if it did anything. So we put the new slip yoke in. That's actually 4-wheel drive, so it's got the longer splines on it versus, so we'll just revisit that real quick, even though you just saw it. It's been a week for me. But the splines in there do not go all the way to the end, and on the 4-wheel drive one, they do. and it was a little bit longer. So we're gonna give it a try, and hopefully it is much more smooth and no vibration. So I do have jack stands under there, just so you know, but also the jack. So don't want it going anywhere. And I got a little block up there for, you know, it's for safety. So let's see what happens. Neutral. Turn that off. Oh, that sound never gets old. So we'll just do it in second first. Alright, so e-brake off. That's smart. E-brake works good though. Alright, so it's spinning. Better, so there's still something wrong with the driveline, and I don't know whether it's inside the transmission or what the deal is. Some of the vibration, I mean, I'll be honest, those tires are trash. So this one is worn off. And this one is worn off. So I'm not gonna lie, not the solution or not the outcome I was hoping for. I was hoping that was gonna take care of it. Those tires and the wheels are kind of trash. They've been hit a few times while drifting, so that could be part of it. It did seem slightly better. I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things, and the engine and transmission is solid mounted in the truck, which could be giving me a lot more vibration as well. I don't know. More to come probably. We'll revisit that. We still have lots of transmission stuff to talk about. Still got to figure this guy out. So anyway, thanks for watching. Any questions you have, throw them down in the comment. Feel free to go to chewyksgarage.com, snag a shirt. All right, yeah. Thanks guys. Thanks for watching. See you later.